All right, everyone, something monumental is happening within midterm politics right now, and that's what this is about. This is a pure political move. It's a good one. I agree with the move, but it's extremely risky. We need to analyze Trump coming out and saying, hey, I might shut down the government over the border wall crisis. I want the border wall funded. You look at the cost of illegal immigration, enforcement and everything, it's way greater every year than the cost of the wall over 10 years. Just give me my wall, crack down on the sanctuary cities. We can have a discussion about immigration reform, but it must be now. The problem for the Democrats in resisting his call, and Schumer's going to get some angry messages, I'm sure, over the next couple days from some of his constituents for this. The problem is this. A lot of the Democrats that are incumbent and up for re-election and won't even be able to campaign to defend themselves in the entire month of August are in vulnerable areas where Trump is considerably more popular than the national average. The problem with these Democrats is that in order to appease their constituents and not get potentially kicked out of the Senate, they may have to go along with any sane, reasonable immigration deal. If the Democratic Party refuses thus to even discuss the issue, it makes them look like they're obstructing, and it possibly knocks several of them out of the Senate. You could see the Republicans win all 6 of those seats. If that happens, Trump doesn't have to worry about shit in the House. They can lose the House. He can get every appointee that he wants in. That's number one. Any executive change he wants to make is going to be fine with the Senate, number 2. No obstruction there. The House can't do anything about it. What are they going to do? They can draw up articles of impeachment against him along partisan lines. The Senate will be run by Republicans. The Senate has to vote in order to remove a president from office, overwhelmingly so. It has nothing to do with it. The House can impeach. They can't remove a president from office. They can refer articles of impeachment to the Senate, where the Republicans will then have about a 10-seat majority. That's not going to happen, dude. You'd have no chance that the Mueller probe would go anywhere. He'd probably end his probe the day after the midterms at that point. Trump knows this. The concept of comprehensive immigration reform is very, very popular within the United States. It involves a large minority of Democrats, a fairly large majority of independent voters, myself included. I'm 100% on board with a comprehensive deal. And virtually all Republicans, who all love Trump anyway, his approval in party is higher than Abe Lincoln's now. He's pointed this out. He's not wrong. Within the Republican Party, Trump is the most popular Republican who has ever existed. He's like the FDR of the Republican Party when it comes to internal, at least first or second term FDR. Now, when it comes to internal approval, that's going to be high turnout. That's growing your coalition. That's a very hardened core. That's roughly 30% of the population that gets polled that says, yeah, Trump is God, basically. And he's starting to inch forward on independent voters and eat away at the Democrats' coalition. But it's not because Trump is super strong. It's because the Democrats don't have a counter for him. He knows all he has to do is say, hey, how about that border wall? I'm willing to tie it to amnesty for certain groups. Yeah, we'll show you. We can certainly, the detention camps, hey, if the wall's built, we won't even need half of them, so no worries. We can return children to their families. A lot of them, I'll just let them stay. Veteran, you can stay. Law-abiding person, you got educated here, you know fluent English, you know you're paying your back taxes. I don't care. Legalize 1 million people, but we're going to build the wall and crack down on sanctuary cities so it doesn't happen again. The majority of Americans are for such a deal. When you look at the polling, I had one self-proclaimed, at least progressive, counter me on this yesterday. And they're like, well, this poll shows, most Americans don't want the wall. That you're asking the wrong question. You're asking about one aspect of immigration. Just building a wall and doing nothing else is a partisan proposal that only Trump's core fans are going to accept. If you, though, ask people, hey, would you support an immigration plan where we build a border wall, but we also legalize certain groups of illegals that are already here and have done nothing else wrong, you'd find 60-70% support for such a deal. You throw in sanctuary city crackdown, still, it's overwhelming. It's a supermajority of Americans that support that kind of deal. When you ask only about one component, you're getting a partisan answer. Oh, do you support legalizing people who have fought for the country even though they're here illegally? Yeah, you're not going to get 50+% support on that. If it's combined with true immigration enforcement and a border wall, it's overwhelmingly popular. Most Americans fall somewhere in the center between hardline, MAGA, wave the Bible, nationalist sort of rhetoric, and open borders, legalize everything, in fact, do away with borders, and in fact, entirely democratic tripe. Most people don't support those views. Those are minority opinions. They're fringe opinions. I would say the most fringe opinion at the particular juncture in time, knowing that there is a significant problem that must be solved, the most extreme proposal one could make right now is to delay doing something about it. At this point, it is fairly clear what we're going to need to do. The Democrats will have to fund Trump's border wall. By the way, for the neoliberals in blue areas, that'll be a disaster. It's just that they're postponing the destruction of their party's ability to govern at all by protecting vulnerable Democrats that are up in the midterms. They probably sacrificed 2020 to do so. The alternative is you give the Republicans a massive advantage in the Senate, probably control of the House continuing. Whatever they want to do for 2 years, you've just handed to them and you have a chance in 2020. That's just a chance. So pick your poison, I guess, if you're a Democrat right now. Jettison possibly up to 6 Senate seats to the GOP, and in net it could be 7 or 8. You jettison those to the Republicans, and maybe you have a chance of taking the House and stemming the damage, but probably not. Or you can maybe win 2020 and lose massive amounts of control. Those are your choices. Trump's going nuclear with this because he knows that the majority of Americans support fundamentally his proposal. He's already made it clear what he wants to Chuck Schumer when he shook his hand on this, and even to Nancy Pelosi before the Democrats thought it was a good idea to obstruct and not talk to him anymore. He already made clear what his proposal is. There will be a border wall. There will be no more sanctuary cities. The federal government, by the way, will defend localities that want to exempt themselves from attempts at sanctuary state status, or neighborhoods outlying suburbs around some of these metro areas that are declaring themselves to be sanctuary areas. That'll be cracked down on. No more chain migration. And in return, certain groups of people will gain residency. They won't be immediately kicked out of the country. You got to take care of DACA, by the way, too. Look, deferred action doesn't mean, hey, we're deferring for the rest of your life. You're going to continue being in this country, not kicked out, but in a total legal gray zone. How the hell is that humane, by the way? How is that humane to play politics with millions of people within this country and say, well, we're not going to kick you out, but you're not a citizen or a resident. We're just sort of, you're illegally here, but we're just not going to do anything about it. The Democrats think that that's merciful. I think that it's full of shit, if you ask me. Solve their status once and for all and tie it to an immigration deal. If that means that hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients end up staying here and gaining lawful residency, hey, whoop-de-doo, at least they can pay taxes now properly on paper, be documented and everything straightforward. Build the wall, though. That's what Trump's people elected him to do. That was one of the biggest proposals during the entire campaign, and it repeatedly got massive applause over virtually anything else other than tax reform. Those were the two biggies. Immigration reform, tax reform. There you go. Have jobs and not have this continuous fucking problem that involves cartels, it involves human smuggling, it involves slavery, it involves every horrible thing under the sun, and it's primarily the fault of successive administrations using only executive orders to tinker with a pre-existing immigration system that was never fully and duly implemented, even though it was the law. We didn't follow the law. Bush ignored the law and Obama ignored the law. Going back, Clinton and Herbert Walker ignored the law. Even Ronald Reagan himself basically ignored the law towards the end. They simply ignored what they were elected to do. They were told, solve the problem. Laws were passed to solve the problem. They said, well, yeah, but this part's inhumane. That part's too costly. I don't like this part. I'm using an executive order to change it so I don't have to enforce it. Yay, wonderful. And meanwhile, people are pouring in. Some of them are being enslaved or drugged up or killed and buried out in the desert somewhere for the coyotes and armadillos to feast on. I don't call that mercy. I don't call the Democrats' proposal merciful at all. I call it stupid. It is stupid. The Republican proposal's been barely different for the last 3 decades. Their proposal is paying lip service to solving the problem, going hard line, and then ultimately not even doing anything. Yeah, we're going to kick everyone out, huh? America number one. Oh, they get elected, they do nothing. They don't even talk about it. They just use it as a campaign issue and then rub salt in the wound for a while to get elected, and then they shut up about it. Trump hasn't shut up for several years on the issue. Nobody's willing to work with him, including some of the fucking bleeding heart Republicans, like Marco Rubio. Oh yeah, I love Trump. He's such a great guy, really popular, but I can't agree with him on this. No, I don't want to talk about immigration. I want to be reelected. That's what it's about. They want to save their jobs. And save face. I think the Republicans, in some ways, some of them are more scared about the issue than the Democrats if Trump were to succeed, because then they would realize that their stupid proposals that they never did anything about are unpopular. All of a sudden, the new precedent is, hey, the government is supposed to actually do its job. It's actually supposed to defend our borders. Wow, there's a border there. It's not just an imaginary line. It's a delineation between sovereign nations that people will come out and say, well, no human being's illegal. No, you're not illegal, but you are illegally in another country. You're not being documented properly. If I were to say, hey, I'm going to walk across the border into Pakistan or Iran or China or something, I'm not going to be documented. I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to expect that they're going to allow me to work. They're going to allow me to draw benefits. They're going to eventually give me residency just because I happen to be there, because it'll be a big problem. And then I'm going to rail about how bad they are and talk about how bigoted their culture is, by the way. I don't think that I would find a very warm reception for my position now, would I? In no other place in the world would you find such a warm reception as here in the U.S., which is why it's a problem. Ultimately, because people have done nothing about it. Under Obama, when push came to shove and state militias started trying to staff the border, Obama went and freaked out and said, no, it's not legal for you to do that. It's not legal for you to detain a person, even though it is. The courts repeatedly showed it was. He simply didn't want to enforce it. He decided, oh, what a great wedge issue to campaign on and ultimately do nothing about. But if you look at Obama when he was first running, he sounded a lot like Trump. It's just he never sounded like that again, even during re-election bid, because he had partisan Democrats. He didn't want to scare them off, I guess. Every other president we've had since Ronald Reagan has basically said the same things that Trump has said. He's the only one, though, trying to do them. Therein lies the difference, and that's why I believe that Trump is doing a good job. That's what we voted for him for. That's why he's there in that position. Yeah, you can call that mean, it's bad, it's wrong, it's immoral. No, it's not. No, it's immoral to let people stream across and get enslaved or get sold into cartel captivity or pimped out. That's immoral. It's immoral not to follow the laws that were passed decades ago. That's about all. Peace out.